This episode of The Climate Show is brought to you by Celsius.co.nz, HotTopic.co.nz and Kiwi FM.
What good is a drop in the ocean? What good is a drop in the ocean?
Welcome along to The Climate Show, a program all about climate news, science, policy, politics, and of course, the solutions as well. I'm Glenn Williams, coming at to you from the Kiwi FM broadcasting studio in Auckland City, North Island of New Zealand. And here's my co-host. Couldn't be doing it without him. It is Gareth Ronalden from the HotTopic.co.nz headquarters in North Canterbury. Hello to you, Gareth.
Hi there, this is the wiper a bunker for Hot Topic, yeah.
All going well in North Canterbury. It's starting to warm up. It's all starting to look very nice outside in New Zealand.
Yeah, if I look a bit pink, it's because I've been out in the sun tending to my vineyard. There's always far too much to do in the vineyard. Yes. And it's a brilliantly sunny, hot day today. As
you should do. Now, last episode was the episode we're calling Beta. Should we call this episode 1?
We could do, or it could be Beta 2. But no, I think we've got a really good show lined up, so I'm happy for it to be Climate Show 1.
Okay, good. Yeah, we do have a good show lined up. Of course, not too far away, we'll be delivering some of the latest news, interesting stuff that's been doing the rounds at the moment. And our feature interview today, Graham, is Graham.
It's Graham Kendall,
yeah,
who is an amazing Kiwi yachtsman who has just sailed through the Northwest Passage in a record 12 days solo. Immense thing to be able to do that, and it's great that we're able to get him into the studio and have a chat with him about his experiences.
Yeah, he's only just gotten back, I think, just getting his land legs back.
Yeah, that's right.
And also a new feature to the show with John Cook from Skeptical Science.
Yeah, we mentioned, we talked about John's site, Skeptical Science, in the beta, and I showed the iPhone app. And I'm delighted to say John's agreed to join us every time we do the show and to run through some of the key skeptic articles or arguments that are so well debunked at Skeptical Science. So I think it's really good to get John on board, and hoping that it will be a sort of really exciting and interesting part of the show.
And then we'll round off the show with some green tech, a wee bit of a solution.
We're going to talk about electric cars and computer games.
Great. Oh, the two together. I love both those things. And there's been a few subscribers on the iTunes. We've only just released that iTunes feed, so thanks very much for subscribing there. And there's also the Facebook page. At the moment, we haven't got the short URL for the Facebook page just yet. We'll hopefully get that soon. In fact, we need, I think, 50 people on that Facebook page before we can do that. So just search for The Climate Show on Facebook, you'll find it. And also the Twitter. We've got the Twitter up and running, twitter.com/The Climate Show. Is where you head, and promise that website soon, theclimateshow.com. But in the meantime, hot-topic.co.nz for all the show notes.
I'll have there'll be a category on the site for the Climate Show, so you'll be able to click on a single button and get all the shows in one place. So we'll get it to you somehow. All
right. Well, without further ado, let's look at some of the latest news. First up, global coral bleaching event is underway.
Yeah, according to some of the scientists working in this field, this could be the most, or perhaps the second most extensive global coral bleaching event in recorded history. And what happens is that the corals, they're like warm seas, and they're a tropical thing. Coral reefs, I'm sure everybody's familiar with them from visits to the islands or to the Great Barrier Reef off northeast Australia. But they like the water warm, but they don't like it too warm. And because we've been having a very warm year, the record sea surface temperatures over January to September 2010 have caused an enormous amount of coral bleaching in the Caribbean, and also in what they call the Southeast Asian Coral Triangle, from the Seychelles over towards the Philippines and Sulawesi and so on. And one scientist, Dr. Andrew Baird at the Centre for Excellence for Coral Reef Studies at James Cook University, reports that It's the worst coral die-off seen there since 1998, and it could be the worst such event known to science. So far, around 80% of one species and 50% of colonies of another species have died since the outbreak began in May. And that's remarkable. It's the same thing is happening in the Caribbean. And what happens is the water gets a bit too hot for the corals and they just die. And if it's too bad, the corals take a long time to recover. Sometimes they recover well, sometimes they don't. But clearly it's a major impact because coral reef systems are very important, not just because they're pretty things to, snorkel over or to, look at the fish, although those are good things to do. They're actually very important economically, and they're a very significant part of the whole ecosystem in the tropics, but also of the sort of life support systems for the people who live on the lands surrounded by these coral reefs.
But you mean because they are breeding grounds for the fish, and therefore the income and food supply for the local people?
Yeah, absolutely, and also for tourism too, because the tourists go to see these beautiful things, and if they're not so beautiful anymore, or if they're badly affected by bleaching and dieback and changes in the mixture of species that are there, then people won't go anymore. So so it's a dramatic thing, and it's one of the interesting aspects. A blogger called Maribo, who's a science in this area, Simon Donner, he's called. He did a paper on this subject back in 2007, looking at the 2005 event in the Caribbean, and they thought that was there was a big bleaching event back in 2005 in the Caribbean, and they thought that this was probably a 1 in 1,000-year event, and this year that Caribbean heat wave has happened again. So that's 2,000-year events in 5 years. So, you can draw your own conclusions as to what that means about the prospects of coral reefs surviving as we go on getting warmer.
Indeed. Well, onto the next story. The next IPCC report will consider geoengineering schemes.
Yes, absolutely. Then the 2007 report, AR4, basically said that geoengineering schemes were sort of untried, unproven, and didn't really devote much time to them. What geoengineering is basically finding ways of cooling the climate system to try and, because we're warming up. So what you do, well, one of the things you could do is try and cool it down. And there are a number of ways of doing that. One of them is to reduce the amount of sunlight coming into the system, and there have been proposals to launch lots of space mirrors. So you would put these things out in space between us and the sun, and they would deflect some of the sun away, and so we'd cool down a bit. Another proposal might be to put when Mount Pinatubo goes bang in the tropics, or went bang in the tropics in the early 90s, the planet cooled afterwards for a couple of years because of the sheer amount of volcanic ash that went up into the stratosphere. So there have been suggestions that we could mimic that by actually deliberately injecting aerosols into the stratosphere, which is something that planes do most of the time, actually. High-flying jets. And so cut down on the amount of sunlight reaching the Earth and so cooling it. There are other things that qualify as geoengineering. There have been suggestions about creating fleets of ships that create lots of, basically squirt seawater up into the air to make lots of low-level marine clouds, which it's thought might be able to cool the Earth by increasing its albedo. There have even been suggestions that to try and preserve the Arctic, you might, cover it with white cloth.
How weird!
Well, lots of ping pong balls. I think it was white ping pong balls, but don't hold me to that. But I mean, this sort of thing's actually being done on a very small scale in Austria, where they have a summer ski industry on the glaciers in the very high Austrian Alps. They're getting such a lot of melt that they've begun to put down basically blankets on the glaciers to slow down the rate of melt over summer, so that they can have the snow available later in the year. So geoengineering is something that people have begun to look at and take seriously, because it's become obvious that we're going to have to do something about global warming, and it may be that geoengineering can buy us time to reduce our emissions and maybe go so far as to help us take carbon out of the air so that we can actually begin to get the planet cooling.
Well, it almost seems like doing war against climate change in that context, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about it, if you were going to fly millions of mirrors out into space, the cost would be absolutely enormous. So actually the cheapest thing is probably injecting aerosols into the stratosphere, because we've already got 747s that can do that, basically. But the problem with geoengineering is that we don't know enough about the climate system to really know what will happen if we start playing with it like this. So the skeptics like to argue that we don't know it. We don't know enough to be able to be sure that we should take action. Well, we certainly don't know enough to be sure that if we go around cutting the amount of sunlight reaching the Earth, it could result, for instance, in drought in one country and flooding rains in another, and you could end up with wars being fought over the impact of what was supposedly globally a good thing to do. There's also a big problem in that if we were to say use aerosols to cool the planet, you've got what's called the termination problem, and that is, if for any reason you stop doing it, then the planet will warm very, very quickly, within a couple of years after stopping. So once you've started doing this, basically you've just got to keep doing it.
Right.
That's a huge commitment.
So it's like kind of being on a medication, and then you're on that for the rest of your life. You sort of condemned yourself.
Yeah,
to...
it's sort of climate change morphine. But anyway, what the IPCC have said is that they will look into geoengineering for the AR5, the fifth report, and so there will be a panel meeting to discuss and look at what's been done in these areas, and it'll be very interesting to see what approaches. Most people feel that at the moment geoengineering is a sort of high risk kind of last resort.
Oh, well, on to our final quick story.
I've got two little stories in here coming from Greenland, because Graham Kendall, our guest, coming up shortly, set off from there to sail through the Northwest Passage. And one of the problems with measuring sea temperatures in the Arctic is that, first of all, it's very cold, and it's not easy to measure ocean temperatures in the middle of winter in the Arctic. So what a bunch of very clever scientists did was they tagged narwhals. Now, narwhals are a toothed whale. They have a sort of unicorn horn on their noses, and in fact the narwhal horns are thought to have given rise to the legend of the unicorn. So what they did was they tagged these narwhals with temperature probes that would record as the narwhals dived, and some of these narwhals go down as deep as 1,700 meters, or more than a mile, chasing. They eat halibut. And so they go chasing the fish, they dive down, and so the sensors then record the temperatures, and when they come back up, the scientists can gather the data. And what they found was that the Baffin Bay, which was an area between Greenland and Canada where they didn't have very good measurements of ocean temperature, was actually just under 1 degree Celsius warmer than they thought it was. So now they're looking at ways and means of perhaps doing a similar thing, but recording more oceanographic data. So I just put that in because I thought it was great that we're actually using whales. Whales are on our side. Fantastic.
And you'll find the links to those stories in the show notes at hot-topic.co.nz. Hey, Gareth, before we bring Graham on, I do want to thank one of our sponsors, Celsius.co.nz, have come on as a media partner for the show, which is really great. Celsius, CELSIAS.co.nz. Now they're part of the Tangible Media Group, and the whole website, as it stands at the moment, I understand things are slightly changing and getting rejigged, but essentially at the heart of it is sustainable news for businesses, and and looking at green tech and innovation, not only here in New Zealand but around the world.
Yeah, they do a really interesting newsletter every week, which is full of good information about what's happening in New Zealand and around the world in this sort of green tech sustainability area. So, yeah, thanks very much to Celsius for coming on board, and welcome to all of Celsius's readers who are perhaps watching us for the first time.
Yeah, we're absolutely chuffed.
Actually, most people are watching us for the first time.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. We're chuffed to be on there and Celsius helping us out, getting the show around the place.
All right, excellent. Well, this was probably a very good time to bring in our special guest today, who's Graham Kendall, Kiwi yachtsman who became the first man to sail the Northwest Passage solo, non-stop, and in 12 days, and arrived back in Auckland a few days ago. So welcome to the show, Graham.
Thank you, Gareth. Good to be here.
Thank you. Talk me through the voyage. I mean, you could probably write several books on the subject, but you actually sailed originally to Greenland a couple of years ago, is that right?
2005 I sailed to Greenland. I didn't intend to sail to Greenland. I intended to carry on through the Northwest Passage, but that year the ice was heavy and wasn't able to go through, so I ended up going to Greenland as a consequence. And then this year, through various because of various reasons, I was able to get back on the boat and try to finish the trip, and as it turned out, it was successful.
So tell us a bit about the boat. What actually were you sailing?
Astral Express. It's a 12.5 metre yacht that I had built specially for a solo around the world voyage, and part of the plan on that voyage was to sail through the Northwest Passage, so it was configured to be able to handle the ice, had certain features that made it safer than a normal boat to do that.
So presumably that means a tough hull, does it?
Kevlar hull, which is theoretically as strong or stronger than steel, watertight compartments, lifting keel, lifting rudder, very, very secure glass on the top side. Quite a lot of little facets on the boat, and designed for one person to sail, so the accommodation was for one person. Everything about it was just designed for a solo trip.
Okay, so you parked the boat in Greenland for 5 years. Whereabouts did you set off on the second leg of the voyage then?
Well, I sold the boat in Nuuk, which is the capital of Greenland, and the owner of the boat made it available for me to continue, so he was able to use the boat. I actually picked the boat up with him in the Faroe Islands where his family live, and I sailed with him and his son from there to Iceland, and then through the fjords of Greenland at the bottom, and then up to Nuuk, and then between us we helped get the boat ready, about 8 days preparation, and then I took off on my own. I think it was the 19th of August to head up to Lancaster Sound, which is the entrance to the Northwest Passage.
So what was the state of the ice at that time? I've been watching the sort of satellite pictures and so on over the summer, and it looked as though it cleared up quite quickly. What was it like when you set out?
It looked good. In fact, it looked good. I mean, this is the big advantage of leaving Nuuk to go through rather than leaving Auckland, which I did in 2005. I left Auckland in 2005 in April, so I had to pre-guess the weather early on, but leaving Nuuk I was able to watch the weather. In fact, even before I left New Zealand to go up there this time, I could see that things were looking quite good. But even leaving Nuuk, it wasn't a dead certainty, and Edward, who owned the boat, and I decided that we would both look at the ice conditions as I entered Lancaster Sound, but I sort of felt, because late August is the time where it is the best, between the first 3 weeks of September, and I still had 10 days to go, that it should improve, and it did improve as I went, and by the time I was to go through, it was just perfect timing.
Now there are two ways through, aren't there? There's the northern route, which is straight along Lancaster Sound and keep going to the Arctic Ocean, and there's the southern route, which is what Amundsen used, isn't it? So did you take the southern route?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the northern route. I don't think many boats have ever taken the northern route. I think the icebreakers of Canada and Russia and other countries go through may do that, but Generally, it's down through Regent Sound or Peel Sound, and then along Queen Maud Gulf. There was a shortcut available through, I think it's Prince of Wales Strait, and this year, had I had a crew on board, I think it was a distinct possibility. But if we'd have done that, we would have been the first private boat to ever use that particular course. As it was, I was able to take a shortcut through Victoria Strait, which isn't often used and isn't often open.
So what were the ice conditions like? I mean, were you sailing past a lot of ice, or
At
how
times-
do you keep watch as a solo sailor in those sorts of conditions?
Well, you know where the ice is, and then when you're in it, you have to stay awake if you're meandering through it. And there was one time where I was up for about 15 hours. It was 15 hours doing the ice, and I'd already been up for 6 hours. So, but luckily I cleared it about 3 in the morning, and with virtually daylight all day long up there, I was able to get through it, and then I cleared, and I could see 30 miles ahead was clear, and I was able to get some rest before daybreak before I went down Peel Sound. So using the satellite information that the Canadian Coast Guard put out on the computer, I was able to see exactly where the ice was and generally be able to sail around it.
Because it's interesting, because wouldn't you say that the fact that the ice is broken up obviously allows you to go through, but it inherently makes it more dangerous, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, you better. I don't know whether I have ice in my drinks anymore. I mean, you really want to stay clear of ice. It's it's formidable, and the thing is, the sea ice is usually flat and about up to lately not even a metre thick, and that ice generally melts off so that the water is clear. But the ice that you encounter is multi-year ice, which is harder, it's misshapen, and it moves with the wind. So you can encounter a blockage on a good season if the wind happens to blow it in the wrong direction. And as I went through Queen Maud Gulf and into Dees Sound, I was able to get through some ice that was congesting, but 2 boats behind me found it difficult to get through because 30-knot northerlies had blown ice down from another sound, and it congested. So that ice moves quite quickly in the wind, and it's harder ice, and it usually doesn't melt.
When you were there, did you get the feeling that you are in a new environment, a changing environment, and an environment that you perhaps shouldn't be in almost?
Oh, you definitely feel like you're trespassing at times, but then other times you think, it's so special to be there. My feeling all the time was to get out of it. Was to go as fast as I could and get through and get out the other side and be gone, because if you get stuck for a couple of weeks and then the weather starts to turn, you could end up being there for next year, and it starts going dark in a month and it freezes up, and it's a whole new ball game. So I didn't want to be in that situation.
What's the landscape like up there? I've been reading reports from some of the other yachts that went round the Arctic, in fact both directions, and there were comments about there not seeming to be much in the way of wildlife. The stuff that needs the ice was missing.
It's barren. I mean, it's there's no trees and there's no buildings. I mean, you look at an area of land and think, oh, that'd be a nice place to have a holiday home, but there's just absolutely no structure. So you get used to seeing barren land. Yes, I guess if you're on shore you would see wildlife. I saw some through the binoculars, but sea life, beluga whales and things like that, and more so as I got out of that area into the Bering Strait and Bering Sea, I started to see walruses, which I'd never seen before, and they were just amazing creatures.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what was the weather actually like? I mean, clearly, if you're getting 30-knot winds, that's quite a challenge. But
yeah, well, I
generally,
didn't get those, and that was that for me. I encountered some ice, and I was lucky that the ice conditions were very favourable, and I was lucky to be able to take that shortcut through Victoria Strait, and I got very good weather. From a sailor's point of view, I had winds in a good direction and not too strong. I think I had 20-25 knots down Peel Sound, but it was a tailwind, and it was just, I think I did one of my best days runs doing that. And also going from east to west, there's a favourable current, and this is one of the reasons why, when I originally planned the trip, that I planned to go that particular way.
Now, you also met up with a guy who was rowing through. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, well, that's a story in itself. I was coming down Peel Sound, and Peter Semtiuk, who runs the radio sked, said to me, "Oh, you might want to look out for a French rower that's going down your way." And I thought, well, you know, he's doing his trip, I'm doing mine. I don't want to get too involved. But as I got through Peel Sound, I got a phone call from Matthew, who was the Frenchman rowing, and he was pretty adamant that I took his position down because I think he needed a bit of assistance. And I got his position and said I'd find him, and as I got closer I got another call from Peter, who gave me his very latest position, and it wasn't far off where I was, so I was able to deviate. And I thought, well, if I'm in trouble, I want someone to look after me, so it's my job to swing by. So I did that, and got him on the binoculars, and then moved over, and he had an Alsatian dog on board, and he put the dog in the aft cabin, and then got a little bag of food and got a rope and threw it over to me, and I got him on board. And he was pretty shaky. I think he was getting into hypothermia, and he just needed a break. So
A hot cup of tea.
I had him on board for about 4 hours and gave him a steak and a glass of wine and soup and coffee and a lie down, and he immediately put one of my jackets on. But not a young guy, and a really nice guy, and ever since we've communicated, he rang me about 4 times as I went through. He couldn't believe I was going to Auckland non-stop, and he apologised for not being here when I arrived in.
So, yeah, I can imagine a Frenchman being pleased about being given a glass of wine in the middle of the Northwest Passage.
I think it absolutely blew him away. I think he was quite flabbergasted. And it was my last steak, and the wine I gave him was out of the only wine glass I had, because why would I need 2 wine glasses on board?
So
Sorry, Glenn.
I'll just say, so Graham, was any of this about, is it about just the adventure and being the first to do it, or, is there an environmental slant to what you were doing at all?
Not necessarily, but this is something that I've been trying to put together for about 10 years, and you start to learn the environmental issues, and obviously, over that period of time, I've taken a close watch on the ice conditions in the Northwest Passage, and I've seen what years they're there and what they aren't. But it seems that the ice conditions in the Arctic have got, or the area of ice has decreased over the period of the 10 years I've been watching. And even the year that I went through, the ice area was quite low. It just happened to be congested in the area that I wanted to go through. But on the Russian side, it was very low, and I think this year, I haven't checked it yet, but I wouldn't mind betting that this year is probably one of the lowest on record.
It was actually the 3rd lowest on record at the minimum, Graham.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't surprise me.
And there were a couple of boats, the Northern Passage from Norway and the Peter I from Russia, that managed to do the Northeast and the Northwest.
They did the whole lot. Yeah,
season.
They did both. They were about 10 days behind me, and yeah, Peter was saying that they both were sort of trying to beat each other to be the first to do that.
Yeah, I think the Peter I had a bigger motor. So now you've got the boat back in Auckland. Does that mean you've got to take it back to the Faroe Islands, or?
No, Edward's finished with the boat. He's had it for 5 years and done what he wanted to do, so the boat will now go on the market. So I'm sort of in the throes of tidying the boat up, getting it serviced, and then we'll put it on the market. I think there is some interest in it from England, but he didn't want to proceed with that until I'd done my trip, so it'll probably get sold from here.
Do you have any sort of voyages in mind?
None at all. I've called it a wrap. I've done what I want to do, and pleased to have got back. And this sort of thing is like running the gauntlet. I think the more you do it, the one day your number will come up. So I'm pleased to have it all behind me and have myself and the boat in one piece here in Auckland.
Yeah, and enjoy the long, hot New Zealand summer as well, no doubt.
Exactly.
Yeah, Graham, thanks so much for joining us on the Climate Show. If people want to follow the story and see how it unfolded, plus all the pictures as well, there's the website astralexpress.com. Thanks, and do keep us in touch with future adventures as well.
Welcome.
Right, moving right along now. Let's start a brand new feature on the show. I mean, this is only episode 2 or episode 1 if you don't count the beta anyway. So we can create new features whenever we want, I suppose, at this stage, early stage of the Climate Show. We're calling this Debunking the Skeptic, and we're bringing in John Cook from skepticalscience.com. He's the chap who started it. John, hello to you.
Hi, g'day.
And you're joining us. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Brisbane in Queensland.
How long's Skeptical Science been around, by the way?
I started in 2007.
Okay, and why did it come about? Why did you start the site?
It actually began with just having arguments with my father-in-law, who's a pretty diehard skeptic, and so he handed me a speech by Senator Inhofe, who famously said that climate change is like the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people, or something to that effect. And when I started researching all his arguments in his speech, it just took me aback how little science there was, how the actual peer-reviewed science was saying the opposite to what his arguments were saying.
Yeah.
So I guess in anticipation that I would probably be having more conversations with my father-in-law, I started researching into the subject and building a database of skeptic arguments.
And
Are you still talking to him?
No, he doesn't really talk to me about it much. Yeah.
well, you went to
my own father's a skeptic as well, but he refuses to talk to me even if I bring up the subject.
One of the great things about John's site is that it debunks all of the popular skeptical arguments. And so for this first session, the most popular, if that's the right word, the most used part of the site recently has been a discussion of the so-called ClimateGate emails. Now, these were emails that were stolen from a server at the University of East Anglia's Climate Research Unit some point during the middle of last year. And an edited version of those emails was released by some strange coincidence, not too long before the Copenhagen conference. And within a matter of days, the skeptical universe was up in arms and screaming conspiracy and calling it the death of peer-reviewed science and all sorts of things. And what John has done is to basically provide the answers to those sorts of claims. So, John, do you want to? I know you wanted to look at a couple of the most common of the skeptically cited emails.
Yeah. I guess the most. See, I've been with part of my website. What I like to do is keep track of the most popular or the most used skeptic arguments, and so I just keep a database of all the different articles. And the most cited one was an email from Phil Jones where he talks about hiding the decline. And the most common interpretation of that little quote was that scientists are hiding the decline in global temperatures, like as if it's actually cooling now, but scientists are hiding that and fudging the data to make it look like it's warming, or something to that effect. And even I heard Sarah Palin not that long ago say something to that effect, say that scientists are hiding the decline in global temperatures and destroying their data. So it's a very common interpretation from that email. But if you actually read the whole email and look at what he's talking about, he's not talking about a decline in temperature at all. He's actually talking about a decline in tree ring growth. Now, to work out past temperature change, scientists use various proxies like stalagmites or ice cores, and tree rings are another method that they use just to work out how temperature has changed in the past. And so what Phil Jones is talking about is just this unusual phenomenon where tree rings have declined in growth since the 1960s, and yeah, this is something that's been openly discussed in scientific papers since 1995. So it's not like a secret, the climate scientists' dirty little secret that they whisper to each other in secret emails. It's something that's openly discussed in the peer-reviewed literature.
Yeah, it's amazing that it's been so misused, but it just shows how effective the sort of skeptic echo chamber was with those emails, because they were able to take all sorts of quotes, rip them out of, well, the emails themselves were taken out of context, but then the quotes from within the emails are taken out of context, and they take on a sort of another life, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, science it can be quite complicated at times, and sometimes it's hard to summarize a science in like a 3-word quote mine. And unfortunately, that's what's happening in these cases.
And is that also the issue where the skeptics who pulled out these emails and sort of fiddled with them, do they then confuse the media because the science is so complicated?
Yeah, well, I was actually at a talk last night with some journalists and scientists talking about just the climate change and communication, and ClimateGate was actually one of the main topics that was discussed, and the journalist she was just researching into environmental journalism, and what they found was what she found just interviewing all the top environmental journalists across the world was that what they were having trouble actually getting their environmental articles published. Like, editors just weren't interested in them anymore until ClimateGate happened, and then suddenly that gave editors a whole new angle, like a conspiracy theory angle, and suddenly it was interesting to them again. So I think it provided this false narrative that that people were interested in, this narrative that there was this conspiracy theory, when the actual reality was, what's being discussed in all these emails, when you look at them in context, are just technical issues that scientists just talking about their trade.
Now, one of the other quotes that really got sort of widely spread around was one from a New Zealander, Kevin Trenberth. Can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, what Kevin said in an email was something about how we can't account for the lack of warming at the moment, and it's a travesty that we can't. And again, it was a similar interpretation from this as the hide to decline, where people were saying, there's no warming, they can't find any warming, so they're having to invent it. And all you have to do is read the full email. And what Trenberth is doing is he's just emailing all his colleagues saying, hey, I've just got a new paper out, it's just been published, and here's a quick summary of it, and he just summed it up in a few lines. If you go and actually read the paper, he starts out in the opening paragraph saying, there's no doubt that global warming is happening, that the planet is accumulating heat, but the problem is our measurement system isn't able to track every little bit of joule that's accumulating in all the different systems. And what we need to do is improve our observation systems to measure ocean heat to better depths and with greater coverage, to measure what's happening to our ice sheets better. And yeah, he wasn't questioning whether global warming was happening. He comes off straight away saying it is. We just need to understand all the different elements of it better.
So in the emails, John, my impression was that they sort of shone a sometimes unfavourable light on the way that scientists talk amongst themselves, but they didn't really raise any fundamental questions about the state of climate science. A year on from the ClimateGate email release, do you think that's a fair summary?
Yeah, that would sum it up, really. I mean, there's been half a dozen different investigations into the emails, and these are from a whole bunch of different places. Like the UK government have done a couple of inquiries, and and the University of East Anglia have investigated the emails on several occasions, and so has Pennsylvania State University, where Michael Mann is a professor, and all of them have found independently that there's no evidence at all of any wrongdoing, of any falsification of data. There were a few criticisms, but they were things like the scientists could be a bit more organised. Like they were small laboratories that weren't equipped for this onslaught of I guess there were a number of skeptic blogs that were inciting their readers to submit Freedom of Information Acts against a lot of the scientists involved, and they just weren't equipped to deal with this kind of thing. So some of the investigations recommended that they set up systems to deal with this kind of thing, and to be more open in sharing their data.
Now, one investigation we haven't heard from, of course, is the police investigation in Britain into who actually stole the emails. It would be nice to think they could find out who did it, but at this, a year on, and with no sign of anything coming from the police force in East Anglia, it begins to look as though whoever did it has got away.
Yeah, I know someone at the University of East Anglia, and I asked them if they knew anything about that and whether there'd been any information on the investigation, and nothing has come out yet. So, yeah, unfortunately, we probably won't find out.
And I suppose we're recording this on November the 2nd, which is, of course, the Senate and Congress elections in the US. And there's a threat from Republicans to relitigate the whole ClimateGate affair. So I guess it still isn't dead.
Yeah, I mean, that's a distinct possibility, and it's going to be a real shame if that happens. I mean, really, what ClimateGate is about is taking the attention away from the science and trying to focus it on scientists. And what we really need to be talking about is the scientific evidence. And what's involved in the ClimateGate emails is just, a couple of pieces of evidence, the man's hockey stick and the crew surface temperature record. But the evidence for that humans are causing climate change is, comes from a whole range of disciplines and a whole bunch of independent measurements, satellite data and measurements of heat escaping to space and more heat coming back to Earth, and nights warming faster than days and winter warming faster than summers. There's all these independent lines of evidence, and none of them are affected by anything in the ClimateGate emails.
So John, in your view, has the media adequately corrected some of the misinformation that was brought about by ClimateGate? Has the media talked about the science enough to put people's fears about these scientists and their motivations? Have they done enough to correct it?
It's been a pretty half-hearted correction on the part of the media. There's been a few prominent environmental journalists, such as George Monbiot, who initially came out calling for Phil Jones' resignation, and in the end he retracted that. But it was almost damning with faint praise, his retraction. He said something to the effect that Phil Jones he hadn't done anything wrong. He shouldn't be resigned, but only just, or something to that effect, which I thought was a pretty poor reaction. I think he could have come a lot further than that. I mean, what ClimateGate is just taking emails out of context and trying to smear the whole field of climate science, based on emails between a handful of scientists, which is a ridiculous, stance to take, and that really is the scandal with ClimateGate, that there's an attempted smear on a whole field of science.
Yeah, and as with so many of these skeptic things, it was also brilliant PR. It was, as you say, it gave newspapers and the media in general another peg to hang the whole story on, and it got their the skeptics achieved their goal with it. As you say, it has nothing to do with science; it has everything to do with politics. Anyway, John, many thanks for joining us this week. We hope that you'll agree to make this a regular part of the climate show, and hopefully we'll work our way through lots of the material you've got on skeptical science.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
So check it out. skepticalscience.com is where you head. Thanks, John.
No worries, thanks.
Yeah, great to have John Cook on. I mean, before we move to the final section of the show, I'm looking at some solutions. We've got we're going to talk about a computer game and also some electric cars with 2 motors. I want to thank one of the other sponsors for the show and media partner, of course. It is hottopic.co.nz, which is Gareth Ronaldin's baby. Gareth, everything going well over at Hot Topic? There always seems to be lots of news every day up there.
Oh, it's great. And I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank Brian Walker, who's my co-blogger. And Brian writes really thoughtful and interesting reaction pieces to the sorts of stuff that's going on in the world. I tend to concentrate more on the sciencey stuff, and Brian deals with sort of politics and ethics and morality and so on.
Well, it's essentially the home at the moment for the climate show. Until I can get around to putting up a website on that domain, which I'm really hoping to do soon. But so all the show notes will be up at hot-topic.co.nz.
That's great. We've some of the reaction we've had so far from other climate sites has been great, because there really is, I think, a need for lots of good programming on this area. So. Hot Topic's really pleased to be involved with it.
So let's go to the final section of the show, to the solutions. This week we've got some electric cars with 2 motors, Gareth.
Yeah, that's right. It's something that popped up in my RSS feed a couple of days ago, and it comes from the Economist's Intelligent Life magazine, and one of their authors had driven what in America is called the Chevy Volt. And in Europe is going to be called the Opel Ampera or the Vauxhall Ampera. It's a very strange name. It should be called the Vauxhall Volt, as Vauxhall had a thing of calling all their cars with a V, but anyway. And it's the Chevy Volt is interesting because one of the things that people have been concerned about with electric cars is the range that's available, on the batteries. What happens if you run out? It takes hours to charge up the batteries, and if you're away from home, this could be, you might have to have more than a few cups of coffee before waiting for the car to fill up. So one approach to dealing with the issue of getting range is to have a smaller battery pack, but have a petrol engine as well, and have the petrol engine basically drive a generator. And so in the Chevy Volt or Vauxhall Ampera, I think it'll give you about 40 or 50 miles of range on the battery, and then the motor cuts in and takes over. So you can actually go up to 300 miles on the fuel that you're carrying in the tank. The General Motors call this thing the EREV, for extended range electric vehicle, and it's going to go on sale in Britain next year for about £30,000. That's after a government subsidy of £5,000 towards the purchase of electric vehicles.
Is it a game changer, do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. The article mentions that the companies that have been doing research on it, on people's usage of cars, is that most people actually drive only a very short distance. So 50k range is actually what most people would do in a day. BMW have got a fleet of mini extended range cars that they're using to sort of survey users, and in fact GM recognizes that with the Volt as well, because if you've been running the car on battery only for more than 2 weeks, then actually the engine will start up to charge it just to make sure the engine's working okay. So I mean, if you look at in my case, the longest regular journey I do is into Christchurch and back, which is a round trip of about 130k. So if I had an electric vehicle that had a range of 150k, I'd be fine.
Yeah.
Just come back home, plug it in, off we go. But the extended range thing would be useful if you ever need to make really long journeys, and you've basically got that in reserve.
Well, finally.
So, anyways, it's a good and interesting piece. I recommend reading it.
That is, and finally, just to finish off, a quick word about a game in climate change. Excuse me.
Yes, it's called Fate of the World, and it's a sort of turn-based strategic game. It's just I think the beta's just been released for Windows at the end of October, so it'll be an interesting game to have a look at. This go to the site and you can see some of the things that go on there. Interestingly, some of the scenarios have been, or the climate change scenarios have been developed with a climate scientist, a British climate scientist called Miles Allen. So it's, I would hesitate to say that it's realistic, but I mean, one of the things that you can do is if you think there are too many people in the world, you can design a virus to reduce the population, which, possibly presses the wrong button for a few people. But I mean, it's a computer game. It's interesting, and perhaps Glenn, you can get hold of a copy and review it for us.
I'll see what I can do. I'm not a big PC gamer mind. I'm on the console, but I could always whack it on a work PC around here somewhere. Anyone mind? No. Anyway, hey, that's been the website, that fateoftheworld.net if you want to check out that. But otherwise, the notes, of course, up at hot-topic.co.nz. That has been episode 1 after the beta of the Climate Show. Don't forget to subscribe. The iTunes link as well will also be provided up there, and also this embedded YouTube clip, and also downloadable audio file as well. The Facebook page.
And feedback too, please. Lots of feedback.
Love to hear some feedback. And check out the Twitter page, twitter.com/The Climate Show, and also Facebook as well. At the moment, you have to search for The Climate Show on Facebook. Hopefully it'll come up. And don't forget, if you can, share it with everyone. We want to get this show out as wide as possible, and so we can make it better, brighter, and all that. Gareth, we'll see you at Hot Topic, and me at Kiwi FM, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. Been a pleasure as always.
Later.
Cheers.
What good is a drop in the ocean? What good is a drop in the ocean?